Welcome to Deep Dive. In this episode, we talk about the pineal gland, light, and consciousness. Since I'm going on an Anthony Peake binge, we reference his book, The Infinite Mindfield, a quest to find the gateway to higher consciousness.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine experiencing something really odd, not like hearing voices, but perceiving these rhythmic pulses, almost like clockwork. Our source for this deep dive, Anthony Peake's work, actually starts with his own personal story about this.
Right.
A feeling that his brain was picking up signals from somewhere, not just in his head, but maybe shared.
Yeah, that's what grabs you, isn't it? He immediately looks for an external cause rather than just saying, oh, it's psychic or something purely subjective.
Exactly. He wanted a tangible reason.
Which, really sets the stage for this whole exploration. It's very human that need to find logical explanations for weird stuff.
Absolutely. And that curiosity, which I bet mirrors why you, our listener, are tuning into this deep dive on these kinds of unusual sensory things. It really sends us on a journey. We're looking at scientific research, historical texts, personal stories.
All sorts of things.
Our mission today really is to try and connect these seemingly separate dots, the links between external signals, our own biology, and maybe those altered states of consciousness.
It really taps into that core human thing, doesn't it? Grappling with the unknown. We just want to understand.
So these signals, his first thought wasn't psychic, but almost like tuning into a shared frequency.
The consensual reality, yeah.
And this led him to look into HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Okay, HAARP. It's important to get its official purpose straight. It's there to analyze the ionosphere, that upper layer of the atmosphere.
Like for improving radio communications?
Exactly. It's up in Gacona, Alaska, funded by the U.S. Air Force, Navy, University of Alaska. It's all public knowledge.
And the core of it is the Ionospheric Research Instrument, the IRI.
Right.
Picture this, 180 antennas, huge field, and they can blast out this powerful electromagnetic radiation, high frequency.
Specifically between 2.7 and 10 megahertz.
Megahertz.
Which brings us to hertz, right? Hertz cycles per second. The fundamental unit, yeah. Tells you how many times something oscillates per second. And 1 megahertz, is 1 million cycles every second.
1 million. It's hard to grasp. And these radio waves, like HAARPs, they're just a tiny, tiny part of the whole electromagnetic spectrum.
It's a liver.
And get this, a wave that's just 1 hertz, 1 cycle per second, has a wavelength of about 186,000 miles.
Massive.
Yeah.
Which leads to a really interesting point the author makes about HAARP.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't just transmit continuously. It also uses these short, powerful bursts.
Yeah.
Pulsed radio frequency radiation.
Pulsed.
And the author notes that this pulse type has been suggested, in various studies as potentially able to influence, maybe even disrupt, human mental processes over pretty large areas.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That definitely makes you pause.
Yep.
Especially when you think that our own brains run on electrical signals too, right?
Different waves. Delta for deep sleep, 0.5 to 4 hertz, super slow. Then theta, 4 to 8 hertz. For light sleep, daydreaming.
Alpha, 8 to 13 hertz when you're relaxed. Beta, 13 to 30 hertz. That's kind of our normal waking state.
Standard operating frequency.
And then gamma, faster, over 30 hertz, up to maybe 100 hertz. Super alert, maybe anxious states.
Precisely. And the author connects this to the HAARP idea. Could external frequencies, similar to our own brainwaves, actually affect how our neurons fire? He brings up Dr. Andrija Puharich's work. Puharich suggested specific frequencies could induce moods, like 7.83 hertz for happiness, 0.8 hertz for riotous behavior, apparently, and 6.6 hertz for depression.
7.83 hertz. That number rings a bell. Isn't that the Schumann resonance?
Bingo, yeah. The Earth's own natural background frequency, resonating in that cavity between the surface and the ionosphere.
Like we're sort of naturally tuned into the planet's rhythm.
You could say that.
Yeah.
But what's intriguing is the author felt these signals in the northwest of England.
Right, miles away from Alaska, thousands of miles.
So that distance makes you wonder, could there be other sources, closer ones?
Yeah, he mentions IceCat in Norway, another similar research place, but maybe even closer. He points out that the Alaskan HAARP was built by a British company, BAE Advanced Technologies.
Yeah.
And they had a big presence right near where he lived.
Okay, that adds a layer, doesn't it? And then he talks about visiting near his old home on the Wirral later on.
But he felt the signals again, the same ones.
It's anecdotal, of course, but compelling.
So the big question he poses, and it's one for us too. Could these experiences actually be linked to external electromagnetic signals messing with brain activity?
It's a provocative thought. And it leads us nicely from the external possibilities inward to our own biology.
Right. He proposes a specific structure as a potential receiver, the pineal gland.
This shift is key to his whole argument. The pineal gland as maybe a kind of sense organ for these signals, or maybe even for processing another form of light.
Yeah, the third eye idea immediately springs to mind, doesn't it, from all those mystical traditions?
It does, and he draws that line directly from the esoteric third eye to the actual physical pineal gland sitting there in the middle of the brain.
And it gets more interesting. He suggests the pineal might monitor dyschronogenic effects.
Basically, disruptions to our body clock, yeah. Like from electromagnetic fields messing with our sleep cycle.
So it hints at this built-in biological sensitivity to our electromagnetic environment.
And beyond the science, you have all those esoteric traditions looking at the pineal as like a gateway.
To higher consciousness, yeah. This tiny little gland may be playing this huge role, physically and maybe spiritually.
That duality is a constant theme, isn't it? The science and the esoteric side by side. He then dives into ancient cultures, looking at how they perceived this connection between inner awareness and light.
Okay, where does he start? The Anunnaki, from Sumerian texts.
Briefly, yeah. Just highlighting their reputation in those texts for having advanced knowledge, maybe even of human anatomy. Raises questions,
Then onto Zoroastrianism, ancient Persia, modern Iran.
Right. And the idea of Aryan Vijahi, a sort of golden age, and the belief their teachings came from that pure earlier time.
I found the stuff about the Fravashis fascinating, the guardian spirits, and the Urvayan, the soul.
On a journey to the Stodi Yasna, the center of light.
And he mentions the Jahian, the crown of the head, as the spiritual center, and Muda Sharifa for creative thought.
And the ultimate destination, Anagra Rauchal, the city of endless lights. You see similar ideas elsewhere, that luminous ultimate reality.
Okay, moving east now, the Chandogya Upanishad, an ancient Hindu text.
With that profound idea, the microcosm reflects the macrocosm. The universe within us mirrors the universe outside, all held in the lotus of the heart.
That interconnectedness theme again.
It's fundamental in Eastern thought. Kashmiri Shaivism, another Hindu tradition, takes it further. Siti, universal consciousness, and Jivas, individual consciousnesses.
And Praka, the light of consciousness.
The uncreated light, yeah. Seen as the basis of everything. And he suggests it can be directly perceived when the pineal gland opens through spiritual practice, sadhana or kundalini awakening.
Wow, directly linking inner light to the pineal opening.
Then he looks at Buddhist symbolism. Angkor Wat. Those antithetical animals flanking bodhisattvas.
Representing brain hemispheres, maybe? With the bodhisattva as the pineal pituitary axis?
That's one interpretation he mentions. And the hair on Buddha statues, those tight curls.
Yeah.
He notes they look strikingly like pine cones. Another visual link.
Interesting. And Bun Buddhism from Tibet.
Their dream yoga practice, cultivating awareness in dreams, highlighting altered states again. And, the Silk Road connecting all these places, maybe ideas were shared.
Makes sense. What about the Tibetan white drop from the pineal?
Mixing with the red drop in the heart for enlightenment. A very potent image, reinforcing the pineal's role.
Okay, China now. Taoism. The Tao as the ultimate creative principle, like Brahman in Hinduism.
And yin and yang, those complementary opposites. Plus the circulation of the light practice, focusing energy in the head, the upper tantine.
And here's a weird detail. Pineal sand. Actual tiny crystals in the gland.
Yeah, and their potential function, according to some research, seems to echo Taoist ideas about focusing inner energy. Pretty strange.
He then throws in a link between Zoroaster's grandson and Egypt's second dynasty.
Hinting at ideas moving west. And in ancient Egypt, the hieroglyph for Netter force of nature, divine principle, looks a lot like the pineal gland.
And those images of the Neteru holding staffs topped with pine cones, the staff of Osiris's.
Another really strong visual connection.
Finally, for the ancients, Plato's allegory of the cave.
A perfect metaphor, really. Our perceived reality is just shadows, a degraded reflection of a truer existence. Much like experiences in altered states.
It's amazing how these themes pop up everywhere. Okay, let's switch to Western esoteric traditions now. How does the pineal show up there?
Kabbalah, Judaism's mystical side, is a big one. He mentions Rabbi Joel David Baxt's work.
Right. Understanding the pineal is key for communicating with higher dimensions. And the idea of two Jerusalems, earthly and higher dimensional.
Yeah, Bless talks about needing to refine these scientific vessels and return them to their origin, absorbing discoveries back into the supernal Torah, the divine wisdom. He even links the Second Temple's architecture to human anatomy, symbolically.
Wow. And the Lurianic Kabbalah.
Concepts like the Shever HaKalim, the shattering of the vessels, this split the pure realm of light, or Ein Sof, from the realm of darkness, Sitra Achra.
And the idea of Adam Kadmon's soul shattering into sparks. And the Tzilim, the inner divine self.
Located in the pineal gland, yeah. Trapped in the physical body. It's a powerful metaphor.
He notes Kabbalah shares roots with Gnostic writings, too. Quotes a Gnostic text about light being boundless, eternal.
Christian mysticism also has this theme of luminous experience, Taboric light, from the Transfiguration story.
And hesychasm, the Eastern Orthodox tradition.
They practice looking inward to see an inner uncreated light theoria, using the nous, the eye of the soul, leading to noesis, spiritual insight.
Persian Islamic mysticism too, Suhrawardi.
His concept of the light of lights, Nur al-Anwar. Again, light is fundamental. The physical world may be less real, even illusory, compared to pure light.
What about Freemasonry? Lots of symbols there.
Definitely. The eye of Horus is prominent. They often refer to the pineal as the sacred eye of the ancients, the third eye.
Pine cones in their buildings too, and that carving on the Whitehall building. Snakes, staff, wings.
Some interpret that as Kundalini, the Ida and Pingala energy channels from yoga.
Their focus on the number 3, maybe the third eye again, and the all-seeing eye symbol.
On aprons, the US dollar bill, often with a pyramid. More pineal imagery links. He even quotes Alice Bailey calling Freemasonry the home of the mysteries, a training ground for future occultists.
He also mentions Osiris's lantern from Egypt and Rudolf Steiner's view.
Steiner saw the pineal as the internalized source of Holy Grail myths, accessible through those hypnagogic states between waking and sleep.
Which brings us back to the author's own experiences, right? Those moments just before sleep or waking up.
Exactly. Seeing the room with eyes closed. He uses the terms hypnagogia and hypnopompia for these states.
And sees them as maybe evidence of another kind of vision, with the pineal playing a role in this inner seeing.
It's a neat bridge from the esoteric back to a more scientific look at the pineal. Early science, like Descartes calling it the seat of the soul.
Though the pituitary seemed more likely back then. Right, they understood its hormones better.
But then you get those early experiments, McCord and Allen grinding up pineal glands.
And lightning tadpoles. And Lerner discovering melatonin at Yale, confirming that skin lightening effect. Hints of a light connection.
And Fisk's experiment showing continuous light affected rat pineal weight and fertility. More solid evidence linking the pineal and light perception.
So melatonin is a hormone, a chemical messenger, and its production is regulated by light hitting our retinas.
Yep. Blue light suppresses it. Yellow light apparently doesn't. Explains why a campfire might make you sleepy.
And the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nuclei, that's the master clock in the brain.
That's right. Gets info from the optic nerves about light levels, tells the pineal what to do regarding melatonin.
But it's important, he says, the pineal reacts to an electrical signal from the retina, not the light photons directly.
Correct. But it still strongly suggests a past photosensitive function, an evolutionary history.
And the inner light stuff in hypnagogia or phosphenes, those patterns you see when you rub your eyes.
Also discussed as maybe remnants of that old photosensitivity.
Now, for something really unexpected, microscopic crystals in the pineal gland.
Calcite, mostly, calcium carbonate. And they have this specific structure, no center of symmetry.
Which means they can be piezoelectric.
Exactly. They generate a small electric charge when squeezed or vibrated.
Wow, that raises questions about sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, doesn't it?
It certainly does. He then looks at magnetoreception, how animals like pigeons navigate using magnetic fields.
And damage to the pineal messes up their navigation.
Studies show that, yeah. And NASA detecting breaches in Earth's magnetosphere. Geomagnetic storms possibly affecting the pineal adds another layer.
Plus, Dr. Bayless's study linking pineal calcification in humans to a weaker sense of direction.
And that story of the pigeon northern star getting lost, found to have a heavily calcified pineal.
Is calcification common?
Pretty common, yeah, especially as people age. High metabolism, lots of blood flow. And he mentions Professor Luke's research suggesting fluoride might increase calcification and reduce melatonin.
Okay, so we've got possible external signals, the pineal as a receiver. Let's zoom out now. The nature of light and reality itself.
Back to basics. Electromagnetic energy, frequency, wavelength, amplitude. Visible light, what we see, is tiny, 380 to 700 nanometers.
He uses that great analogy. The visible spectrum is like a tiny stretch of the Mississippi River compared to the whole thing. Really shows how little we perceive directly.
Though we get into the weirdness of quantum physics, wave-particle duality, the double-slit experiment.
How photons act like waves and particles, and how just looking changes things. It messes with your head.
And Clay's explanation of light reflection. It's not just bouncing off. Electrons absorb photons, then emit new photons.
So our perception of the world isn't passive. It's an active recreation inside us.
Which leads to the idea that maybe we emit light too. Biophotons. He mentions Gurevich finding plant roots emitting UV light mitogenic rays affecting neighbors. Biological light emission.
Okay, now connecting this to DNA and consciousness, he starts with that scene in Prometheus.
Aliens seeding life with DNA, yeah. A dramatic hook.
Then a quick history. Miescher finding nuclein, Mendel's genetics, Avery showing genes are nucleic acid.
And Crick and Watson cracking the double helix structure.
Highlighting Crick's mystery. DNA needs proteins to copy itself, but proteins need DNA instructions. It's a chicken and egg thing.
Which led Crick to his panspermia idea. Maybe DNA arrived on Earth already fully formed from space.
And the DNA molecule itself looks structurally like an antenna, right? Suggesting it could interact with EM fields.
Then there's Gurdiev's research on linguistic wave genetics. And Montagnier's experiments.
Suggesting DNA emits EM signals that can imprint structure onto water. Wild stuff.
Connects to Pribram's holographic theory of memory in the brain. Maybe DNA is involved in hypercommunication within the body, maybe even outside.
What about junk DNA?
Guriev suggests it's not junk, maybe involved in this communication. His work on DNA vibrating like soliton waves, self-reinforcing waves, hints at this vast information network in matter.
He shares Gopi Krishna's Kundalini experience to liquid light entering the brain, and Narbi's ayahuasca vision of talking snakes.
Which leads us right into ayahuasca and altered states. He mentions Shannon's encounter in Ecuador.
With an indigenous guide who knew so much from their traditional brew, sparked scientific interest.
Ayahuasca, made from the Banisteriopsis caapi vine and Secotria viridis leaves chacruna.
The name means vine of the soul, tells you something about its traditional use.
Spruce noted its effects way back in the 19th century. Zerda Bayon even suggested telepathy via ayahuasca. And harmaline in the vine is chemically identical to Harnian Syrian rue used in the Middle East.
The key ingredient in the loaf is DMT, right? N-dimethyltryptamine.
The spirit molecule, found in lots of entheogenic plants, synthesized in 1931, but Zara showed its powerful psychedelic effects later via injection.
And then they found DMT naturally in human blood and brain tissue.
Yeah, blood in 62, brain in 72. Suggests a physiological role. Ruho found sigma-1 receptors activated by DMT in 2009, confirming it as a neurotransmitter.
But the enzyme that makes it, INMT, is low in the central nervous system. So how do spontaneous altered states happen? Still a mystery.
Rick Strassman suggests DMT crosses the blood-brain barrier, maybe mediates everyday reality somehow. He notes you stay self-aware on DMT, like in those hypnagogic states.
Strassman's idea that DMT modulates the brain's reality wavelength, suggesting the observer is separate from the brain as a receiver for biophotons.
It's a fascinating perspective. And people often report interacting with seemingly independent entities on DMT or ayahuasca. He references McKenna and Norby.
McKenna's reptilian entities, claiming they created life on Earth to hide. That's out there.
It is. But then, Bonnet and Endy storing digital data in DNA in 2012, it supports this idea of information being fundamental to reality.
Circles back to Crick's panspermia. Maybe DNA is universal for creating sentient life.
And Hancock's question, what's the evolutionary point of self-reflective consciousness beyond just survival?
He shares that thought experiment too from the Walker group, a bored god experiencing existence through all conscious minds.
Then an Egyptian text mentioning the fiery serpent, Horus's protected eye, echoes again, leads to Narby exploring snake symbolism in ayahuasca.
And connecting it to the DNA double helix, a deep, maybe archetypal link.
Which brings us towards the conclusion, tying together light, consciousness, reality, Bernard Heisch's God theory.
A single consciousness experiencing itself, light as the source of matter, creation by subtraction.
Similar to Huxley's mind at large, our brains filtering cosmic consciousness. Or Orrock's idea of moving through veils towards pure light with entheogens like 5-MeO-DMT.
He quotes physicist James Jeans' universe resolving into waves, matter as bottled up waves, light as unbottled waves, links to let there be light.
And the Bose-Einstein condensate, BEC, matter behaving as one quantum entity near absolute zero. They even made a photon BEC. Shows how weird light is.
Croce suggesting light creates space and time itself.
We touch on the Casimir effect, zero-point energy in a vacuum, the Higgs field giving mass, the quantum vacuum as a plenum, a sea of potential.
The Casimir force explained as radiation pressure forming dipoles.
EG's electromagnetic wind, and Einstein's thought experiment from a photon's view, timeless, never win. Challenges our linear time.
Then the Penrose-Hameroff or Gerador model. Consciousness from quantum stuff in microtubules.
Though criticized because the brain seems too warm and wet for quantum coherence. But then frillless coherent waves in living tissue, maybe macroscopic quantum systems, BECs, can exist in biology.
Kate's research on Healer's awakened mind state, synchronized brainwaves.
And Siegel's work on hallucinations being universal. Internally generated inner light. His drug experiments showed consistent imagery patterns. Suggests an underlying structure.
The author's own experience with the Lucia light machine, generating internal colors, feeling like rising from the chair.
He sees it as evidence for internal hallucinogens, biophotons, and research has shown the eye emits biophotons, likely the source of phosphenes.
Hameroff suggesting a fiber optic system in the body using biophotons connects to the Buddhist body of light, and the Gnostic pleroma, the mind's mega-universe.
Finally, Keith's idea, humanity as memory coils in a big thinking system with a retrieval glitch, possibly linked to junk DNA. Now that 2012 discovery connecting LNCRNA to the pineal, still unfolding.
So the big themes pulling it all together: light's importance, DNA's potential intelligence, DMT's role, maybe accessing multiple realities in the EM field.
He ends by looking at Da Vinci's The Vitruvian Man. Maybe our mind isn't just the measure, but the creator, emanating from a greater unity manifesting as light.
And that leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. Those moments when you just stop and think how strange reality is.
Or how weird dreams can be, hinting at something deeper, more connected, just beyond our everyday view.
Well, thanks for taking this really deep dive with us today. We've covered a lot of ground science, history, some pretty mind-bending theories.
It definitely makes you question your own perceptions, doesn't it? Where do these unusual experiences even come from?
We really hope you'll keep thinking about these connections we've touched on, between external signals, our amazing internal biology, that pineal gland especially.
Altered states, the nature of light itself, and maybe even an intelligence hidden in our DNA.
It sort of blurs the lines, doesn't it, between what's out there and what's deeply in here.
Maybe those lines aren't as clear as we usually think.
So the final question for you to mull out over. Could our everyday reality just be one frequency, one channel in a much bigger spectrum? And what other signals, what other realities might we actually be capable of tuning into?